Zoning Board of Appeals. As Erica took a roll call, we have 3 of our other 4 members of the board present. The one ZBA member not present presently will have an opportunity, if he doesn't come into the meeting, to review the minutes of the meeting and stay current, so that we'll have a full board composition for the hearing process. So, can you move that screen up a little bit so I can read the notice?
Is that better?
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yep, I got it. So, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the vote in the Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a continuation of a public hearing via remote participation on Tuesday, May 19, 2020 at 7 p.m. to hear and act upon the application of the Woods at Farm Road LLC and Deschenys and Farrell PC. The applicant seeks a comprehensive permit for proposed housing development entitled the Woods at Farm Road to be located in Bolton's residential zoning district at the corner of Farm and Berlin Roads, identified on Assessors Map 3C as parcel 72, approximately 2.47 acres. The proposed development consists of 4 single-family detached home ownership units. 3 of the units will be sold at market rate, and 1 of the units will be sold as affordable to those who earn 80% or less of the area median family income to be counted on the town of Bolton's affordable housing inventory, in accordance with General Law, Chapter 40B. So for tonight, hearing items we intend to include will be a review of the Horsley Wetland group letter dated May 12, 2020. Horsley Wetland is our peer review, engineering peer review consultant. A review of design review board report, to the extent we have time, review of department comments received to date, and opportunity for public comment. So with that, why don't we open the floor up to the Horsley Wetland team.
Erica, do you want us to talk?
Yes, please. So I'm going to put your report on the screen.
This is Janet Bernardo. I'm a professional engineer with the Horsley Wetland Group. And with me tonight is Amy Ball. She is the professional wetland scientist that reviewed the wetland delineation or not the delineation, but the wetlands on site. So she's going to talk about the wetlands and what she found. And then I will talk about the stormwater management and what I found from the calculations. So first, Amy.
Hi, everyone. Amy Ball, senior ecologist with the President Group. So we did a site visit about the 7th, 2 weeks ago. And generally we're looking at the site conditions. All of the wetlands at this property have been already approved under an order of resource area delineation.
Amy, could you speak a little louder?
Oh, yeah, you want to turn my volume up. Is that a little better? No?
Erica, can you control the volume?
I don't believe so.
I think it's more a case of being muffled as opposed to volume, but I can sort of understand.
Okay, here I'll hold the microphone a little closer.
Yeah, hold the mic closer.
There we go. So Horsley Wetland conducted a site visit on the 7th, just a couple weeks ago, generally to just review the site conditions and to look at the wetland areas that were in closest proximity to the proposed project. The Conservation Commission approved all of the wetland boundaries under an order of resource area delineation. So we were not there to review the wetland boundaries, just to make some general observations about them. What we did notice is that the site conditions don't entirely match what is shown on the plans, and that's something we pointed out in our letter, in that there are a couple of small buildings that are on the property. And if you go, Erica, to page 4 of our report, there are these two buildings out there. It's a root cellar and what was described as a sugar shack. So the sugar shack definitely shows on the existing condition plans. And then there's another building that shows on these plans. It's a little further to the north. And you can see in the next page, photo 5, how there's the sugar shack, there's this other building sort of closer to the intersection of Farm Road and Bolton Road. And then this other sort of root cellar thing, structure is not shown there. And the reason we pointed this out to the board is because that the root cellar is actually really quite close to the wetland boundary. You go back up to page 3, photo 3. I'm pretty much standing at the edge of the root cellar looking toward the wetland, and we're probably, less than 20 feet, maybe less than 15 feet away from the wetland boundary.
All right, Amy, can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Erica, can you pull up the site plan again that shows those two buildings? So the two buildings, existing outbuildings are shown right there. The one closer to the wetland is the one that Amy was just taking the photo of, but the root cellar maybe isn't part of that.
It doesn't
Sketch?
show on the plan, and the building further to the north of the existing building has just been since removed. So it's not actually on the property right now. And I pointed this out only because there are a couple of things going on with the wetlands. One is that there's no real mention or no discussion, as far as we could find, as to what in the application itself, as to what the sort of fate of these two structures are being so close to the wetlands. We met on site with Seth Donahoe. He mentioned that they may be removing the one and preserving it intact and selling it to someone, and possibly this other structure as well. Again, it's quite close to the wetlands, and the Conservation Commission, under their local bylaw, has some a 25-foot no prohibition area, no touchstone, and then they also have work within the 25 to 100-foot buffer.
Yeah, Erica, maybe if you could show the next
upland resource
plan.
areas.
Sorry, Amy, again. Erica, if you could
That's
show
okay,
the
Janet.
proposed plan now, so that we can see where the buildings are and the grading. Maybe the grading one would be even better. Yeah. And zoom in.
Is there a way to zoom in a little bit? Thank you.
Great.
Right, so these structures were on the existing conditions plan, and are actually much closer, so they're within the 25-foot buffer to the wetlands. And since the applicant has requested quite a bit of relief from the local bylaw in terms of the wetland setbacks, we felt it was important for the ZBA to understand just how close these other two structures are that aren't actually shown on the plans, especially not in the grading plan. And to note that even though there is a small retaining wall and some grading that occurs between 25 and 50 feet away from the wetlands, this structure is actually inside that 25-foot buffer. So we were asking and recommended that the applicant simply clarify what's going to happen there and how they're going to be protected at the wetland areas, to make sure that those areas are protected. And in particular, this one wetland, I don't believe it really came up, and it wasn't defined as such in the order of resource area delineation, but it does show as a potential vernal pool on the Mass GIS natural heritage data. And I think there was some discussion in the order of resource area delineation about how that had not been concluded at the time. If it were a vernal pool, it would we would allow for some additional stringent protection within 100 feet of that area. So taking that into consideration with what the applicant has requested for relief in terms of working close to the wetlands, we believe they're probably going to be working even closer to the wetlands. We think that that's something that the ZBA should be aware of when they're requesting for relief in these areas. The other couple of things that are happening in this buffer zone and in the Holy Aura, the adjacent upland reserve areas, is the placement of a new well and a well house, as I'm pointing, and Erica, you could point them out for me.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt because I have been raising my hand and I put in a chat and I'm not getting any response, but I really don't understand like half the words that are being said. Is there anything that we can do about that?
Is it that I'm using acronyms, or am I too muffled?
It's very, very muffled.
So can you hear, is my voice any easier to understand?
Much
Yours is
more
clear,
clear.
Janet.
100% clearer.
So I think it depends on if you have headphones on. It's all, computers. So a couple of Amy's concerns have been the existing sugar shack and how close it is to the wetland. It's not shown on the proposed conditions plan. And that is one of the concerns with if they're asking for variances on the existing wetlands bylaw. It's not shown here, and that's kind of a concern. I'm sure it's going to be a concern for the Conservation Commission, exactly how that structure is being removed and what that means. So it's just not addressed clearly. I know there's also, and Amy just,
Well,
I'm sorry?
I just turned my volume up a little bit on my headphones. They're not great headphones. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's something. The other thing that is within the buffer zone is a proposed well, and I believe it is just 51 feet away from the well. And I think that's allowable at the state level, but it doesn't fall within the necessarily approved setback from the wetlands under the local bylaw. So we also have recommended, in addition to doing some clarification about those two buildings, that the applicant provides some assurance that there's not going to have any adverse effect on the hydrology of the wetlands because of the drawdown. Again, if this area really potential vernal pool.
Sorry again, Amy, I'm just reading
I'm sorry.
I'm reading a message that yes, the well is shared by all 4 of these units. So I wanted to just answer that question. But it's just 51 feet away from the wetland, which is allowable by state regulations, but it's very close and it's not within the Bolton wetlands regulations.
And Janet and Amy, if you don't mind me interrupting just for 1 second, since I'm in control of the site plan, for those that don't understand how to read a site plan very well, this line here represents the bordering vegetated wetland that Amy's been speaking to. And then this line here that I have the cursor over represents the 25-foot no disturb, which goes all the way around here. This is the 50-foot wetland buffer. Again, continues. And then this is the 100-foot. Just in case.
Yeah, for clarification, the 100-foot establishes the jurisdiction for the Conservation Commission. Under both
The 100-foot is the state requirement. So under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, it's 100 feet from the wetland, and any work within there triggers jurisdiction of the local regulations.
Correct. And then the bylaw is more stringent about its protection of that area.
Is that the end of yours, Amy?
Well, essentially, a couple of things that we wanted to point out is that because there is work within these areas and within the touchstone, the Conservation Commission does require that an applicant provide a preponderance of evidence that all efforts have been made to avoid and minimize impacts within this area, within the buffer zone, and providing, potential mitigation to mitigate for any adverse effects that may occur. So we were just recommending to the board that the town take that into consideration to make sure that the applicant has actually demonstrated that the need to work within this buffer zone area, and particularly so close to the resource area like the wetland. And then we had given a couple of potential possible mitigation thoughts for both the applicant's consideration and the board's consideration. I think ultimately the subdivision will also say potential restoration of disturbed areas or temporary disturbed areas using some native plant species. There are a few.
I'm sorry. I'm still having a really hard time understanding, Amy. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
I am also.
Okay. Headphones.
Yeah, I'll move on to stormwater a little bit, and so we'll keep this plan up so I can.
Hey, Janet?
Yes.
Janet, before you go on, I just want to confirm something. So any of Amy's comments, they will be supportive of what's in the Horsley written report.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Her
So that
comments-
if someone thinks they missed something, if they get access to the Horsley written report, they'll be able to have the full context of what Amy was describing.
Exactly, and she has photographs in there that kind of outline these different points that she was bringing up.
Yeah,
And-
I read the report earlier and it sounded like those are the points she's going over, but for people that may have missed something, it's going to point them to the report, should give them a full understanding.
And
And
I'm sorry, just to add to that, I have sent that peer review report to some of the abutters. For those that don't have a copy of it, you can find it on the Town of Bolton website under the ZBA webpage for current projects, and then go to this project and you'll see it there.
Thanks, Erica. Okay. The floor is yours, Janet.
So stormwater is always my favorite topic. But so just to kind of make everybody understand, leave this right here, Erica. The applicant is proposing 4 single-family units that are these 4 boxes, unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there's 2 common driveways that are adding impervious area to the right now it's basically an open field. And to manage that stormwater, they're proposing to put in what the black lines that are around each of the buildings. They are 2.5 foot wide strips of crushed stone. It's 2.5 feet wide by I think 2 feet deep, but I guess I forget that. With basically the roof runoff will just do, it's like a drip line. So the runoff just goes down the roof into this stone, and in theory, it infiltrates into the ground. A portion of the driveway runoff is going to the rain garden, which is kind of that funky shaped, Erica will find it in a second, like where Erica's cursor is, that funky shaped area, that is a rain garden, which will have some plants in it. It's really, a rain garden is a small vegetated garden that's just depressed. Instead of raised, like maybe some of your gardens are with shrubs and whatnot, they are depressed so that water can flow into them and sit there, infiltrate. If it overtops, it has an outlet control structure that overtops and goes into the pipes and goes out towards the wetland. According to, there's a flared end section with some stone at the back so that it should reduce any erosion and velocity before it gets to the wetland. This rain garden, I think, doesn't have a lot of flow. Of course, now I've forgotten all the numbers, but anyway, so I just want to make sure everybody understands what they're looking at. They also, because this is only a 4-lot subdivision, single-family residential homes, they're not required to meet the Mass DEP Stormwater Management Handbook, which has 10 specific standards that most applicants are required to abide by. Those include not having any erosion in the wetlands and making sure that the proposed runoff is not an increase over the existing runoff. The applicant has been trying to meet those standards anyway, but they are not required to because of the size of the project. Now, because I can't remember all of my comments, Erica, you'll have to go back and forth. We'll flip a little bit back and forth. So keep going, keep going, keep going. All of Amy's stuff we'll be able to go back to. Okay, so generally, so my one general comment was that right next to unit 1, there's a note that says that there's supposed to be a clear path for a fire department access. And it looks like it's a pretty steep hill going around building 1 to get up to the driveway, which I assume is supposed to be the access. It's a pretty steep incline behind all of the buildings. So I'm not sure where that fire access, even if they were to get all the way around unit 4, it's steep everywhere. So that comment was really to have it discussed with the fire department, because any grading that changes in there to accommodate the fire department may impact the stormwater. So as far as what the applicant is required to do is they provide, well, what is common practice with engineers is to provide a HydroCAD software analysis to, and you put in various constraints or criteria, including the type of surface material you have, how long it takes a drop of water to flow from the highest point to the lowest point, and the type of material and the type of soil. So putting all that information in under existing and proposed comes up with calculations. And this is what the HydroCAD analysis does. Some of our points here is basically just some various constraints that the applicant may consider to adjust their calculation so that the design is a little cleaner from a standard engineering practice. Basically, it's using various the rainfall values. There's a lot of different options these days that a lot of engineers are talking about. We're recommending they use a higher rainfall values than they did use. I'm trying to read all these different things. Oh, and just kind of making sure that there are different areas for existing and proposed match. So this HydroCAD analysis is about the calculations. Erica, you can go to the next page. So the stormwater practices for the infiltration trenches that are around the perimeter of the houses, that black line that we were showing you. So it's 2.5 feet wide, but the slopes are very steep on both sides of the houses. They look like almost 10% on some of them. And I'm not sure if that sheet flow that's coming off the roofs, when it hits that coming down off the side of a house, hitting the trench and then flowing that slope. I'm concerned that it's going to have erosion when it gets to the bottom of that slope. So I'm recommending that they manage that in some way. And their time of concentration, there had some funny numbers in there that didn't quite make sense, that I think that the applicant's going to look at and probably be able to adjust them or explain them relatively easily. And so for the rain garden, Erica, can you move that letter up a little bit? They're proposing under drains On the detail, they show these underdrains, which is basically perforated pipes that are under the soil. So when the stormwater flows into the rain gardens, it gets caught in the garden, it flows through the soil, and then it goes out the underdrains. But the HydroCAD analysis doesn't show the underdrains. And I don't know that they need the underdrains. The soil is good. So they show them on the detail, but they don't show them in the calculations. So this is kind of to make sure that the calculations and the design are the same, because that's how we can determine if the design makes sense and if it will work, is to go back to that HydroCAD analysis and see if all the numbers match. So things like the rim of the outlet pipe invert was different on the pipe than it is in the calculation. So that kind of stuff needs to match. It's relatively straightforward. Errors, that's a typical small error that the applicant can correct and make sure that the HydroCAD still works the same way. So it's making sure that the HydroCAD model will show that they're not increasing their flow from existing to proposed conditions. We have a comment about the type of plants that are being used. There is 4 different plants. 3 of them seemed reasonable. They said they recommended salvia, which is a perfectly fine perennial, but it just said salvia, and just want to make sure that it's not an annual salvia and a perennial salvia. And the garden itself, the proposed rain garden, Erica, if you could go back to the plan. The rain garden itself is kind of at the top of the hill, which is slightly an odd place for it. It's almost like it would be a little bit better if it was where drain manhole 4 is and could capture more of the runoff from the driveways and get piped to a lower point. So more impervious area could be caught in the rain garden than is. It's just capturing a small portion of overland grass as well as some of the driveway runoff. So it could, if you're going to put the rain garden in, it is, and I like rain gardens, and they're great, but you might also make it useful and capture as much as you can. And it doesn't have to capture everything and hold everything forever, but it would be nice for water quality. Basically, the stormwater would come off those impervious driveways and get put into something that would reduce any of the sediment or salts or pollutants that are on the cars and the roads before it gets to the wetlands. So this is really about protecting the wetlands and reducing stormwater runoff before it gets there. I know that one of my other comments before we go back to the sheet was the driveway between unit 2 and unit 1. Coming down there is a relatively steep slope. It's about 5% slope, and there's nothing that's stopping it once it gets to the unit 1 turnaround. So I'm just we're recommending putting something at the end of the turnaround closer to the driveway, so that there won't be an erosion coming all the way down and over that proposed boulder. Now, what else does that letter say, Erica?
Let's go back.
Can't remember that. Erosion control, okay, that's the slope. That was the first one. So these are some various comments about the erosion control. I read somewhere about one of the boards wanting a tree protected. I didn't see any tree protected on the plan, and I don't know if that's still something that's important to one of the boards. But I'm just recommend that there's a tree protection detail, and if there is any trees that are to be protected, that they are called out and that a proposed tree line is added. Again, so I noted the shed or the root cellar and how that's being removed, and that it's close to the wetland, as Amy was talking about. And on the existing conditions plan, can you find that, Erica?
Mm-hmm.
No, existing. Almost. Yeah. So all the way where the word Berlin Road. Yeah, Berlin, like near the word with the B in Berlin, there's a catch basin right there, an existing catch basin. That seems to be the only plan it shows up on. But on the, yep. I guess it, and Amy's still on. She saw the, I think right in the same vicinity, but on the side of the development, there's some kind of a hole in the ground, like maybe it used to be a catch basin that has fallen in. There's something amiss with this, and it should somehow be rectified, and maybe that's, this is on the Berlin Road side, and maybe this is not the applicant's issue, but it should be at least protected so that no erosion sediment from trucks moving off the property. So we don't want to add more sediment down that hole that discharges to the wetland. And if it could get repaired along the way, that would be a bonus. So, okay, what else is on that? Yeah, the erosion control comments. Erosion controls. The applicant will have to file a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which, because they're disturbing more than 1 acre of land. So that is a permit that goes under the Environmental Protection Agency and their NIPD stormwater program. Basically, it's a kind of more thorough erosion control plan than an applicant may provide to the Conservation Commission. So that is something that the applicant will be required to do because of EPA. They file an actual permit with EPA. But the copy of the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, which we call a SWIP, can be provided to the town prior to construction. So you can do inspections and you can make sure that they are following their SWIP, because it's more likely that the town will be watching this project get constructed than the EPA will be watching it. So it's nice to have a copy of that and know what's going on. And then I think just some operation and maintenance to make sure that the homeowners are actually able to understand what they're supposed to be doing to keep their infiltration trenches along the houses clean, as well as who's going to be responsible for the rain garden and the flared end section, and making sure that those are well maintained so that they will function for a long time. So I know that was a lot. Stormwater is very exciting stuff, but if I have any questions, happy to help you out. Maybe you can go back to the plan.
Great, thank you, Horsley Witten. Gerard, did you want to ask the applicant if they had any responses at this point, or does the board have any questions for Horsley Witten?
I think some of the questions that I had are some of the questions that Horsley Witten had in there. For myself, I'd like to be sure that the plans that we have certainly depict any and all structures. So I was a little confused about the shed or the root cellar, if they're on the site but not on the plans or whatever. I think we need to, from the outset, know the, full pictorial of where every structure is. Even if it was planned to be taken off the site as part of the construction, we need to know what's really there and if there's an impact. I think they said if they even were to remove some of this or the wetlands, that need to be some type of protection. But if we don't know they're there, we don't want to get into down the road people saying, well, they did something that we didn't know about, and and have it either reflect poorly on the town or poorly on the applicant. So I'd like to get a good starting point of what really belongs on these plans. Then any other board comments, and then we can turn it over to the applicant. Yes,
Yeah,
hearing
I've
none.
got something. Yeah, I've got something. So with regard to the existing structures on there, I wasn't able to hear very well. So what's the condition of those structures now? Are they like
There's,
worse for wear because they're in wetlands or?
No, there's
What's
a
the-
root cellar and a sugar shack, I believe they call it,
Okay,
that are
Yeah.
in relatively good shape, but they're
Okay.
very close to the wetlands. Amy has a photo of it in her portion of the letter. And they're, but see, you can see on the diagram that they're close to the wetlands already. And they're kind of, one of them is half under the ground. You want to see that photo, Erica?
is that the root cellar
Yeah.
that's there?
Right.
Okay,
This.
okay,
So the sugar shack maybe can be removed relatively easily.
hmm
I don't know if that has a floor, doesn't have a foundation maybe. I don't really know, but there's just no reference to what's happening with them.
okay. And they're not historical?
I have no idea.
Mhm.
Okay,
I
Hey, we
can
should look
reach
into
out.
that.
I can
I
reach
can
out.
add
with-
something to that.
Hmm.
Bob Coolidge built those about 25 years ago. I don't know about the root cellar, but the sugar shack went up about 25 years ago, and it was thrown together in a couple of weekends. So I don't think there's anything historic about it. And I'm not sure it has a foundation, but anyway, that's the history on that.
Thanks, Brad.
Also, if I may, can I say something at this point?
Gerard, are you opening it up to public comment yet? Or do you want to wait until we have the other items addressed?
So I wanted to turn it over to the applicant first, but if it's one comment from Tom, one question, I want to go down a series of questions before we get back from the applicant's review of the peer review.
I don't know if I don't know if
So-
I can throw it into one question.
Right, so let's hold until we open for the public comment. We'll do
Okay.
the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Douglas DeShane representing Woods at Farm Road LLC. With me on the call or the meeting tonight is Seth Donahoe from Ducharme and Dillis, as well as Robert Pace, manager of the Woods at Farm Road LLC. I'd like to first just address the Horsley Witten report. And start by saying that we have every intention, and we are in fact already working on a full written response to all of the comments and questions raised in that report. I'm going to let Mr. Donahue draft and send those responses back with respect to the drainage and erosion control and whatnot. And he will be also working and addressing all of the questions in that report. But I'd like to provide a few answers, if I could, to just some of the high points that were raised, and probably specifically the wetland related issues. I will say that in speaking with Mr. Donahoe, he feels very confident that we'll be able to address all of the drainage questions and concerns, and that there appeared to be no showstoppers, if you will, within that report. However, we did want to get through this meeting before finalizing that response in case there was anything new that came up tonight or any major project changes that are coming out of tonight. That way our answers will be made relevant to the proposed development as proposed. So I do want to address a couple of the things, though, just to give you a little head start on what our answers will be. We will certainly provide the board, as well as Horsley Witten, all of the information with respect to those two outbuildings, the Sugar Shack and the Root Cellar. And I apologize if we weren't as clear as we should have been. It is our intention to remove both of those structures in order to develop the property. And we are looking now to see whether or not whether or not that will require any additional waiver requests. We certainly know that the removal of those structures will be part of our notice of intent filing with the Conservation Commission, because we will be working within 100 feet of wetlands. And I can assure you, we will propose to do it in the most protective manner possible. In fact, in speaking with my clients, they would like to see that sugar shack not necessarily be raised or torn down. And so we will be providing to the board, as part of our response, a proposal that if there is anyone in town, any groups or individual residents who would have use for that building so that it could be reused rather than destroyed, we would be willing to work with that individual or group to allow them to take the building and repurpose it. So I just want to throw that out there. That building would be available if it could be utilized by someone in town, or perhaps an organization within town could make good use of it. But in any event, we will provide the details on those buildings, the proposed removal plan, and whatever impacts it will have in terms of wetland waivers or our notice of intent. With regard to the vernal pool, or the potential vernal pool, as was stated, my clients, I feel, did do the right thing here. We went to the Conservation Commission first before designing this project or proposing it for approval. We got the wetlands and all the resource areas on the site reviewed by Conservation, and as was stated, they did issue an order of resource area delineation. According to Mr. Donahue, who was at those conservation meetings conducting that request, the vernal pool, the potential vernal pool, was in fact discussed at those meetings, and we will provide a copy of those meeting video to the board for its records. But that was discussed, and as shown on the order of resource area delineation, there was not a determination made that that was a vernal pool. We then designed accordingly, and we'll stand behind that design. If it turns out that there's an additional waiver required, we will certainly add that, but at this point, we do not believe that would be necessary. However, Horsley Witten did also recommend, or discussed with the board through its report, the idea of mitigating and minimizing wetland impacts when seeking permits under both the local and state regulations. We do plan on doing that in our application to the Conservation Commission. However, as you know, we are seeking specific waivers from the zoning board for some of those local regulations. And so we feel that it would be best to let the zoning board know now that we would in fact be willing to do the mitigation suggested by Horsley Witten as part of and in mitigation of the waivers we are seeking from this board. So we will look to restore disturbed areas on the site, and of course, two of those areas will be the location of the sugar shack and the root cellar, which agreed are very close to the wetlands. So we will have to be careful in not only how we remove those, but how we then restore those areas. So we will restore those areas, and we will use native species as suggested. In fact, at some point, we will provide that proposed plan to the Conservation Commission as part of our filing there. We will also provide that to this board. We will agree to do some management of invasive species on the site. It's been identified that we've got some multiflora rose, some buckthorn, and some honeysuckle in the northwest corner of the site. We will have our wetland scientists look at the best procedure for eradicating that, at least to the reasonable standard we can. And most of that work generally is done by hand so as to protect the wetlands, but we will agree to look at that and propose a plan. We will also agree to take a look at and correct that failed catch basin that was proposed. Quite frankly, that catch basin in its current status is allowing direct discharge of untreated stormwater along that slope and directly into the wetlands. So that existing condition of that storm catch basin in the road is in fact probably doing the very kind of damage to the wetland that we're being asked to make sure doesn't happen. So we would be willing to correct that as part of our mitigation in seeking the waiver. So all of those proposed mitigations are acceptable to us and will be part of our response to you as well as the Conservation Commission. Let me see, what other one did I want to just touch base on? The well, there was a question of whether or not the well will have impacts on the hydrology of the wetlands. We will provide a written response to that comment. However, understand that we are proposing what will probably be a deep well, a bedrock well, which, you know, depending on the depth of groundwater or the water here in the bedrock, could be hundreds of feet deep. And so typically do not necessarily have any impacts on, you know, surface wetlands. But again, we will provide that in a written format. I guess the only other thing I'm going to address, again, other than stormwater things, which I'll let the engineers do. Number 4, well, I think actually that does pretty much address the non-stormwater components of the report. I think we are going to be very responsive to all of those issues in agreeing with Horsley Witten in almost all cases. So I guess that's our comments with respect to the Horsley Witten report, and we will be providing the written answers to the rest of it shortly.
Doug, I saw a chat pop up during the presentation about the well. So that's servicing all 4 buildings, all 4
Correct.
structures proposed? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that outline of expectations or what you anticipate for response time and whatnot. So that turnaround time would be roughly what?
Seth, might you be able to weigh in on that? How soon do you think we can have our responses to Horsley Witten?
Yeah, so just for the record, my name is Seth Donahoe. I'm with Ducharme-Dilla Civil Design Group, and we have provided some of the engineering, surveying, and wetland consulting services for the applicant. I did meet with Amy Ball from Horsley and Witten at the site. I believe it was last week, and we've reviewed the letter. And as Mr. Duchesne said, we really wanted to take in the comments tonight so that we could address them in a comprehensive manner. I would expect that within 2 weeks, we can get a response over to them. And if it's all right with the board, if we could send that directly to them and carbon copy the board on that, I think that would speed things along as well.
Sure. Yeah, because then we can coordinate with their turnaround on responses so that could factor into when we at some point continue the hearing to another date, but that'll help us figure out when the next hearing date might occur. So, okay.
Gerard, do you mind if I for 1 second?
No, go ahead, Erica.
So there were also comments from various town boards, town officials, as well as the design review board. Is it the applicant's intent to address all of those comments in time for the next hearing date as well?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have a copy of all of that? I've posted everything that I have to date to the ZBA's webpage, so I can send that to you.
Yes, I will double check. I believe I have it all. And in fact, I was hoping to, again, we're going to provide written responses to them. It's just That way the record is complete. But I was prepared, should the board so agree, to at least address the design review board comments and the planning board comments tonight. And I can assure you I can be very brief in doing so, because for the most part, as you will see, we are agreeing to the proposed changes, most of the proposed changes from those two boards. So I am prepared to give you a quick overview of what to expect with respect to the design review board and the planning board, if the board would like that.
Gerard, I would just be mindful of the time. It's almost 8:15, and we do have another public hearing scheduled for 8 o'clock. So we're running behind tonight.
So do you advise against going into a brief comment on those two boards from Doug DeSenes, or should we table it?
It's up to the board. If it's just a couple of minutes, I think that would be fine.
Yeah, why don't you, I don't want to cut your time too short, but if you had some prepared, high level on both those, let's do them, and then formally respond.
All right, and I will run through them quickly, knowing that we will be providing a more comprehensive written response. So let me start with the design review board, only because that was a very productive meeting, and I think we had a good exchange of information with the board. They provided a memo with 16 comments, and I'm just going to give you the quick overview. They've asked us to replace the arborvitaes that were proposed along the corner of Berlin and Farm Roads with sugar maples, and we have agreed to do that, and we'll be providing a revised plan showing those sugar maples along the curve as opposed to the arborvitaes. The layout of the driveway, one of the members felt the driveways weren't wide enough, or the curves weren't sufficient for SUVs. We've had Mr. Donahoe look at that again, and we'll verify that in fact those driveways are more than sufficient for passenger vehicles, including SUVs. There was a recommendation that the fire and police departments confirm they've approved the 2 curb cuts, and we have those memos from the fire and police. You'll recall we met with them out on site, and we had a significant amount of discussion about the driveways and the roadways, and it's my understanding that they are comfortable with the proposed 2 curb cuts. They asked about eliminating the curb cut at Berlin Road and making it a single curb cut. In the interest of time, I won't go into that. However, we are not amenable to doing that at this time, given that we've spent so much time getting fire and police comfortable with our curb cuts. Also, if we were to connect it into one, it would have a devastating effect on our stormwater design, and it would result in a significant amount of increase in impervious. So what happens is you fix a perceived problem of 2 curb cuts, and we result in increased wetland concerns, impervious surface, and stormwater. So we are proposing to stick with our curb cuts, provided the fire and police department are comfortable with them, which they have indicated they are. We will be providing these homes they will each have a different color as recommended by the design review board. We're going to provide a palette of colors, and as one color is selected by a buyer, it will be removed. So we won't have 2 homes of the same color, and they will all be a group of colors that that are complementary, as the design review board has suggested. The design review board did not like the proposed stone facades on the buildings. We are going to take them off, but we are going to leave that as an option. If a sale is going to be impacted by the ability or inability to provide a stone facade, we would like the opportunity to provide it. But in the first instance, we will not be putting it on there as a matter of course, as recommended. They had a question about roof overhangs. We are going to accept their recommendation for the overhangs of the roof. We will remove the elliptical windows as they have suggested. And we will go to more horizontal windows or or no windows, but we will adhere to their request to eliminate the elliptical windows. The front door of each dwelling will be half lit as shown on the renderings. We will remove the side railings from the porches as recommended, provided they are not required by building code, and that'll depend on the height of the porch. The keystones on the trim will be removed as requested. The proposed windows on the right side will be aligned as requested. We're taking a look at whether additional windows can be added to the right side as recommended, but we need to see what that impacts to the interior of the building, so I don't have a definitive on that. They've asked us to lower the sills of the proposed windows in the bathroom so that you could look out the window while you were taking a bath. We're not agreeable to that. We believe privacy is more important, and we're going to leave those windows at the height they were. And then they had a question about the roof pitches, and we will agree to the roof pitches suggested by the design review board. So I think with the exception of two issues, one being the stone facade being an option, and the other one being a request about considering lowering the bathroom windows, we've agreed to all of the design review board comments. Planning board, only 5 comments, so I can be much quicker. The applicant, again, their first comment was consider reducing the curb cuts to a single driveway. We'll provide a comprehensive response to that, but as I said earlier, it creates issues with respect to impervious surface, drainage, and some other design features. And we believe the proposed 2 curb cuts is the best option. They want us to verify that the driveway entrance off of Farm Road is located far enough away from the Berlin Road as feasible. And we have, in fact, as I said, we met with the fire and police department and looked at all of that. And we do believe it is as far as it can be. If we stop moving it any farther, it will impact the septic systems. And also the slopes and the grading start to get really steep there. So it would create an issue with the driveway entrance if we were to move it any farther away. Again, fire and police have felt that the distance is acceptable. They've asked us to verify that sufficient site distance is provided at those entrances. We will be adding site distances to our revised plans so that you will have evidence that, in fact, they do have sufficient site distances. They've recommended that stormwater be collected from the driveway off of Berlin Road, and I know that was part of the report we just heard from Horsley Witten. We will be addressing that. We will be adding stormwater collection on that driveway as well. So that question will be resolved in the affirmative. Lastly, the board has recommended we consider a multi-family structure in lieu of the single-family homes. And my clients are going to have to respectfully decline consideration of that. As you know, we have been focused on a single-family design. We believe it's more fitting with the neighborhood, and we are going to continue in that design. But we do thank and respect the planning board for their comments. So I'll get you written responses to all those. They'll certainly may be a little more comprehensive, but I'm trying to be quick for you. So those are our comments with respect to the design review and the planning board. And some of the other boards, we're going to give you written responses to those as well.
Okay. So Erica, do we have any time to allow for the public, or would that be a first agenda topic on next hearing, given we have another hearing that we have to have tonight?
Yeah, I know there are a lot of comments from the public. I see hands raised. I see comments in the chat form. However, we're running 20 minutes behind schedule. We really need to be mindful of the other hearing that's coming up. So I agree, Gerard. I would recommend that at the next hearing date, we open with public comment. So I would just recommend the members of the public that are participating tonight, please, you can either email me your comments, write them down, and we can address them first thing next hearing date.
Can I have 90 seconds?
For 90 seconds, and then we do have to pick a continuation time and then go to the next hearing.
Okay, so in summary, so the Executive Design Committee.
Please identify yourself and your address.
Oh, sorry, Tom Kashuba is 173 Berlin Road.
Thank you.
So the design committee did excellent work. I wish the same depth of work was on everything else. The template, that would be a template for how the rest of the design needs to be changed. No work on mitigating the ever-increasing number of existing problems. Water, by the way, is not a vernal pool. It is a spring-fed pool from the protected Lover's Leap runoff down from Wattaquatic Road, and it is perennial, not vernal. And also they said that 10% of the total allotment of land was for the actual houses. So what is that, like a quarter of an acre for 4 houses? Which was it, like 0.07 acres per house? That's strange. Overlooking the most obvious solution is altering the layout. That would not have to change the design of the builder's designs for the houses. They don't want to do a multifamily dwelling, but if you eliminate house number 1 and stretch the others over, it also goes outside the boundaries of the wetland protection and doesn't impact that. It helps the runoff. It helps the fire access. It helps a lot of things. So that's what I think should be on the table, is a proposal to have it 3 units, not 4, getting rid of unit 1 and stretching the other 3 west north to Berlin Road. And that's about it for now, since we're out of time. That's my thought.
All right, well, thank you for the input.
Can I ask like a 30-second question? Is there any requirement for the builder to prove that he can't make money by building less houses on this lot?
Ditto, yes.
Does anybody know the answer to that?
Mr. Chairman, you want me to take that?
Yeah, Joe, why don't you? That's because Joe's our peer review for the board. So Joe, go ahead.
Again, Joe Pesnola, Mass Housing Partnership Advisor for the board on matters of 40B. Essentially, the economics on this are not something that's within the board's jurisdiction. During the initial review and consideration of the application, this is in accordance with the regulations that govern Chapter 40B. It would only be upon the board proposing a condition or a series of conditions and the applicant stating within the public hearing that the imposition of that condition or series of conditions would render the project uneconomic, that the board would have the authority and justification to require a full review of the project financials.
So why is the board allowing a consideration at all of 4 houses if it's not for the economic feasibility? What is the other possible reason?
The board has to review what's been proposed before them and move through the process that they're moving through right now. So essentially, the discussion is not what is economic, it is what has been proposed.
So we have to reject it rather than offer a proposal to help them.
If the board, the way that this normally works is the board is within their power to deny the project. That they can deny it, they can approve it, or they can approve it with conditions. If they were to approve it with conditions, and one of those conditions were to reduce the project to 3 units, they would have to provide justification because it would be ripe for an appeal by the applicant to the Housing Appeals Committee. They could bypass the whole discussion of economics by just merely accepting the approval with conditions that would reduce it to 3. Appeal that to Housing Appeals Committee, and Housing Appeals Committee would then get into the economics of it. And if
why would we even talk about 3? Why wouldn't we talk about 2 or 1 at this point? I don't understand why.
Because again, the board needs to review the project before them and not design the project for the applicant.
And is there any
And
reason? would
there is, if I might, the
Joe,
board,
finish up and,
Yeah.
And then we'll have to table the rest of the discussion for the next hearing.
yeah, no, the board needs to review the project that's before them and not design the project for them. And the board is moving through the normal process, and the normal process is to first look at the technical aspects of the project and see if there are genuine reasons that would possibly require the reduction of density. So,
Okay, let you consider that then. Good.
All right, so Erica, I think we need to pick a time where we can continue the hearing. Do you have a calendar?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, with respect to the continuance,
Sure.
you've heard that Mr. Donahoe is expecting about 2 weeks' time to get
Right.
the report in. Perhaps Horsley Witten could comment on how long they feel it might take for them to respond to that, so that we can make sure that we schedule the next meeting for a date after which they will have a chance to respond.
Mhm. Well, I was figuring it would be at least a month down the road, but let's see what if Janet's there.
Yeah, I mean, this is Janet Bernardo. If, it usually takes us a week to 10 days to turn a letter around from the time we receive the package, the response package.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think a month would be reasonable.
Mhm. Okay.
So a month out would leave us around, what's today, a Tuesday? It would be June 16th
Third week of
or
June?
June 23rd.
June 23rd.
June 23rd?
Does that work for the board and the applicant as well as Horsley Witten?
That works for us. We'd prefer the 16th, but the 23rd works as well.
I
And for what?
think if it can be the 23rd, sometimes we tend to get items kind of last minute or close to when we're having the hearing. So I don't know if it gives us a full review time or others, materials, so that maybe they can get their questions in advance to us, maybe help facilitate the meetings via Zoom.
Yeah, think of the abutters too. Thank you.
Do you have any idea how much time the abutters will get in the next meeting to have discussion and questions?
Well, assuming if it's the only hearing we have, and we have a full 2-hour hearing, we can start off with at least the first half hour or so, and say, let's dedicate it to addressing abutter concerns. If for some reason the board has to take other hearings, we'll just have to work on the timing, but the abutters will have their concerns brought up at the outset of that hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I could reiterate what Erica said earlier, to the extent abutters and neighbors could have their comments written and submitted in advance, it would give us an opportunity to formulate responses so that we could be more responsive at the hearing rather than hearing the question at the first time and having to wing it.
Right. So that begs to have it a little later down the road, the hearing, and give people a chance to get inputs to everyone so that people have a little extra time. So does the 23rd work for the rest of the board?
I'm fine with that.
That works for me.
Yeah, works for me.
Okay,
Fine.
so 7 p.m.?
Andy's present as well.
Okay,
Did Andy respond?
Yes, it's fine.
Sorry, thank you.
I'll try not to be late.
hey Andy, how you doing? Welcome. So, so with that, I'll give a motion to continue the hearing until June 23rd at 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Second.
Okay. All in favor to continue the hearing to June 23rd at 7 p.m. via Zoom, say aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
All right. Thanks everyone for participating, and everyone's concerns will be listened to by the zoning board. All right.
Good night.
Erica, do we need a motion to close from this hearing, or is all set just to continue?
No, it's just the continuation. We don't want to close the hearing yet.
All right.
The continuation. Yep. So thank
right.
you, Horsley
So-
Witten, as well,
Yeah.
and Joe
So,
Pisnola.
Yeah. Anyone from the other application?
Okay, good night.
So for the abutters should leave now, or?
Yep. Unless
Okay.
you want to listen to a special permit application.
I think I've had enough. Is that for something totally different?
It is.
Yes.
It's for
Okay.
a project on Main Street. Yep.
Okay, I leave you. Thank you, fellows, and I'm glad to come back next time.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that dropped us down to 11. So that's
How do you
Okay,
stop
I
it?
believe the applicant is participating in this meeting. I see Sean and Megan Duham.
Yes, hello, this is Sean Duham from 670 Main Street, and Megan here as well.
Hello.
okay. So we'll start by just reading the hearing notice, and then we'll get in. But before I read it, I just want to apologize for the delayed start. 40B projects, the one we just had before you, they're comprehensive permits, and they're quite technical, but also they generally have a lot of input. So it ran a little longer. We had some extra Zoom maintenance sort of procedures we wanted to go through. So I apologize for starting you off late. But
That's
thanks
all
for
right. Yeah, thank you.
So in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 19th at 8 p.m. via Zoom Communications, Zoom, to hear and act upon the application of Megan and Sean Duhane of 670 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. 01740. The applicant is seeking a special permit for a property and structure located in Bolton's residential zoning district at 670 Main Street, identified on the assessors map 2.0 as parcel 25. The applicant is seeking a special permit to replace their pre-existing non-conforming garage pursuant to Chapter 250-3C of the Code of Town of Bolton. The application plans are available for you at the Town of Bolton website. So welcome, and why don't you give us an overview of your application?
Yes, sure. This is Sean from 670 Main Street. We have a pre-existing non-conforming structure that is a garage. It's 24 feet street side by 18 depth. And we're looking to replace that structure with a garage for the same use, but pushed back 8 feet towards the back of our yard. Or sorry, 6 feet towards the back of our yard. So completely replace the structure. We have been approved by Conservation Commission on this, and we do have a permit for demolition as well.
So Erica's bringing up the plan.
So you can see here, it's sort of a red outline is the existing garage structure that's pre-existing non-conforming, and they seek to replace it with this larger garage structure here.
So they're basically just adding 6 feet. It was a 24 by 18. Now it's a 24 by 24.
Yes, correct. We were, you know, we identified the project and to exist as a garage again. And when speaking to builders, they suggested extending it to fit modern garages. The structure was built quite some time ago. And lengthening it to 24 feet would allow for modern vehicles to fit in it. And currently the street side is where cars enter the structure, and we're going to keep that.
So Erica, can you show if from where you are on the map, how where's the house is, this existing house right here, right?
Yes, so this is the existing house. Can you see my, hold on.
Yep.
Can you see my cursor here?
I can.
Here's
Yep.
the
Yeah, we can
existing
see it.
dwelling. Here's the existing asphalt driveway.
Right, okay. And so just the cars just pull right into like, so the red line facing where it says existing driveway, those would be the front of the garage?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
It's extending 6 feet past the back of the current structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by extending it to 6 feet, what does it encroach upon? Is it just backyard?
There is a wetland area in the back. There's some delineation of the setbacks or the wetland buffer. Most of our house sits within that 100-foot buffer. Yeah, and if I think Eric, if you scroll.
Photograph now that you can see the backyard and what it basically just moves into the grass area.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would also note that the proposed structure does meet the offsets to all of the property lines.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to get to, whether it had any encroachment on.
Yeah.
So it's all done within setbacks.
Correct.
Just lodging at 6 feet of the footprint. It's pretty much in the same location as the existing structure, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I apologize. I worded that incorrectly. So yes, it doesn't encroach any further into any setbacks as the more so than the existing structure did.
Right. Okay. Okay. And is there a proposed drawing or diagram of the garage?
I believe so. I think I have to pull it up. Hold on 1 minute. So this was their original submission. This is a picture of the existing garage that they seek to replace.
Why do they need to replace that?
No, I know, right?
Here's another view of that structure.
Wow. Yeah.
Still standing some.
And then here's the proposed. Very nice Duhame carriage house.
Oh, you have a name for it. That's beautiful. Yeah. And so that's really nice. So Eric, I saw a note, was it from the Historical Commission on this property?
Yes.
So, and I believe just in summary, there may be some historical significance associated with the house, but the actual current garage structure, and they were in favor, or at least supportive of the garage extension, correct?
Correct. That is correct. They're in favor.
What was that?
That is correct. The Historical Commission approved of the demolition.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's certainly not enlarging the structure more than 50%. They're not, you say, making it more non-conforming. The floor plan. It's still conforming use. Any other issues or things we should be considering there?
I don't believe so. I pulled up the bylaw section that references okay. And I believe that it meets those requirements.
Right, okay.
Through the issuance of a special permit.
Right. So, yeah, it certainly looks like it would be much more favorable to the neighborhood versus detrimental to have a nicer, more modern, tasteful garage structure there. So, any questions or comments from the board members?
No, it looks good to me.
Mm-hmm. Is that Brian?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Have to see the faces move sometimes in these little panels.
I should have said this is Brian.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, it looks good to me too.
Okay, thanks. Brad?
Yeah, looks good to me. Yeah.
Yeah. You're usually my technical guy to say whether he has a problem with the structure. I mean, the proposed looks fine.
Yep, I'm satisfied with what's presented. What's the time frame they're talking about at this point?
Yeah, we'd like to start on it, this spring, and the hope is that it's completed, middle of summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any butters online, or did they send any comments?
I did not receive any butter comments or concerns.
Okay.
I have a question. What is the height of the garage? Is it going to be comparable to the existing structure now? Is it going to be taller?
If I remember right, it is a few feet taller, but it's primarily the same size of the structure that's currently there. But I think taller by a few feet, yeah. Same pitch on the roof. And the roof will be facing the same way that it currently is now as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think with the extension of the 6 feet on the back, that and keeping the same pitch in the roof, it required the roof to be a little bit taller.
You said a little taller, but not substantially taller. It was a little muffled.
Yeah, not substantially taller, but with that extension to the back and the same pitch on the roof, it did extend the roof height by a few feet. I'm not certain on the exact height, though.
22 feet. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So any work
it's about 2 stories, a little more than 2 stories tall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will not be a second floor in the inside. It will just be open.
Will there be a downstairs?
No,
There is now?
there will not be.
Okay.
So if it were to approve, then if we went, it's a condition to have it in substantial conformance with the plans that are here. You don't anticipate any major changes from what's being presented.
No major changes. There's been talk of window placement on the east or west end, but we haven't quite figured that out. But other than that, the structure is exactly how we see it built.
Okay. Well. So we don't have any others to comment on it, which isn't a problem. I'm just trying to eliminate, I've made my comments. Anyone else have any other comments or questions?
No, this is Brian. I think it looks good. I'm fine.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion, Brian, on whether to grant the special permit with any conditions such as, into substantial conformity with the plans presented, or?
Do we close the hearing first? Do we close the hearing before we make recommendations, or how does that work?
Yes, the board should close the hearing first before it deliberates on a decision.
Okay.
So I guess motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brad. All in favor to close the public hearing portion, say aye.
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 Okay. All right. So it looks like that was unanimous. Okay. So from my perspective, I think the only thing I'd want to see in the condition is that they constructed and conform in, significant conformity to the plans that were presented in the footprint as presented in the application.
So I guess I could make a motion to approve the special permit under the condition that it's constructed under the plans that have been submitted and the same footprint as submitted.
Seconded.
All right. So there's a motion to grant the special permit on the condition of substantial conformity to the plans presented in the footprint as documented in the application. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Any nays? Yes or no? So motion is granted.
Excellent.
Gerard, could we also get a motion so that I can draft the decision in coordination with you and have you sign on behalf of the board?
Okay.
If you feel comfortable with that, it would just make it easier right now if I only had to collect one signature versus 5.
Mm-hmm. I'm fine with that. If anyone wants to motion it, or I'll motion it.
I can let Gerard be our signer for the special permit.
Okay. So that's already a motion to allow myself to work with Erica on the decision and sign on behalf of the board. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so that passes, Erica.
Who seconded that motion? I apologize, I missed that.
I did, Brad.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right, I think I have everything I need then to draft the decision, so.
So you just let the applicant know the time frame. So we have 20 days to draft this.
We have,
what's the time?
we have 14 days to draft the decision and also record it with the town clerk. So once it's recorded with Pam Powell, who's our town clerk, there's a 20-day appeal period. And then once that is over, you can then go ahead and record it with the Registry of Deeds, so long as there's no appeals, and you're good to go.
Understood.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate the board's time on this. Thank you very much.
Yep, and thank you for your patience earlier tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
So, motion to close that hearing now, Erica, correct? And then we can do the administrative work? So Erica, do we just have to do the last item, the minutes?
Yes, if the board doesn't mind, and then we can adjourn this meeting.
Sure.
Okay. So I read through the minutes and the blind squirrel found one thing that I sent to Erica, like an edit, but I was comfortable with the substance of the minutes. They were very detailed and accurate.
Yeah, me as well.
Okay, did you get through them? Did you usually have a fine tune eye too?
Here is Gerard's edit here
Yeah.
that we've incorporated.
Units.
So Erica, how do we, on those, do we, is that in a PDF format that we would just sign on, or how would you do the approval noting? Is it
So I
need a
just,
vote?
yeah, I just need a vote, and then right now Pam is just requiring that I add some additional language at the very top saying that the board essentially has voted, and I provide the date and I submit it to her.
Okay. Or if she needs, if we have part of the vote, I can sign on behalf if that's necessary. But if not, if it's just we can put a note, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when everyone's had a chance to look at them, if you can just say yay or nay or good or to Erica, then we can know that she can proceed.
Yeah, Erica's Brian. I they're good with me.
Okay,
Fine
great.
with me as well.
Yep,
Thank you.
I
Yes,
think
with
so.
me as well. Yeah.
Do you mind if someone just makes a motion, and then that way I'll have it for the record?
I make a motion to approve the minutes before us and have Gerard sign them.
Second.
Second?
It sounds like Brian seconded that. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Yep,
Aye.
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 Okay.
Great, thank you so
Motion.
much. And then we can just have a motion to adjourn.
All right. Perfect.
I make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second?
Second. All right. So all in favor of the motion to adjourn? Aye.
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 All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you so
Yep.
much.